Hello again and welcome to the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Online, you can find us at moretoretire.com. We're glad you find us on the radio. We're glad you find our podcast. We're glad that you're just kind of taking some interest in this point in your life where you walk away from a paycheck from your employer and all of a sudden now you have to generate that employment and that paycheck and Social Security and all that goes along with it. It gets a little complicated, and that's why we need some help. And that's why I have the guy next to me here. His name is Marc Oslar. Marc, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, Randy. What a day. So we got a lot to get into here today, don't we?
We really do. I mean, things are changing all the time. I mean, you can look at politics and the things that are happening around the world. That certainly affects our markets and Jerome Powell and all that goes along with that. But really what we're here to do is talk about what's going on with you and what you're concerned about and the concerns that you're bringing to the table. So that's kind of what we dive into here. So if you don't have any help for retirement yet and you're looking for somebody to talk to about it and kind of actually go through the nuts and bolts, we'll give you the number here. It's 984-300-1984 to talk to Marc. It's a no-cost, no-obligation look at your retirement. It's 984-300-1984. And Marc, we're going to talk about some of the things that people come to you with. And there's some concern out there. And I'm going to give you a story here that I've seen a half a dozen times now. And it's come to the point now I just got to get your take on it. And that is this, is people are comparing the Roaring Twenties to the 2020s, okay? So when you think about the Roaring Twenties, I think of, flapper dancers and prohibition and excess and all that crazy stuff that happened in the 1920s. But if you look at that decade and you look at the decade that we're in right now, it gets a little eerie here, actually. The Roaring Twenties started out with a pandemic. It was the Spanish flu. That was 100 years ago. There were huge advancements in technology. People were buying more and more on credit in their personal life and in the stock market. There was inflation. There was some rub with the Fed. And there was this huge gap between people who were ultra wealthy and the average worker. Boy, that sounds like today, doesn't it? I mean, I can see why they say that. And here's where we're really worried, and that is the 1920s ended in the Great Depression. And so people are saying all this stuff that we've going on right now that is similar to the 1920s could end up in the same place. So, Marc, if somebody came to you and this was their concern, and there's always somebody out there who says the market's going to go off the cliff, what is your conversation? How do you handle that one?
Well, the first thing I think about is, don't we need to set in some preservation tactics in your portfolio? Because if you have this concern and you just have all your money in the market and you know that people are over leveraged, because right now personal credit is at an all-time high, not just business credit, but personal credit. This is a subject of conversation that has been going on now for many, many years. We have not had a correction, an actual full correction in the market for going on 17 years now. Right? That's a long time, Randy. And so for me, the first thing I think of is that bullet point preservation. What are we talking about? Well, one of the examples of preservation is, do you have enough income in retirement, because they kind of combine. So I use these 3 bullet points: preservation, income, and growth. And we use these constantly because they're 3 essential elements that we like to use in retirement planning. So if you need some preservation tactics, you need some income, and let's just say you don't have any income built into your portfolio for future retirement other than Social Security, maybe we should have a conversation about fixed index annuities or multi-year guarantee annuities or an annuity with an income rider. These are real conversations we should have, and right now.
Yeah, I think if you're scared of the headlines, that should just really be a red flag to you and say, why are you scared? Well, you're scared that you're going to lose money. Well, why are you going to lose money? Maybe it's because you have too much in the market. You have too much market exposure. And we need to talk about those preservation tactics that Marc talks about all the time. We talk about having, you have all-weather tires on your car. You need an all-weather portfolio to handle the summer, the spring, the fall, and the winter that may come in the market as well. So if that's got you concerned, that is worth some time to talk to Marc about. Here's our number and here's our website, moretoretire.com. Just spell it right out, moretoretire.com. There you're going to see a place where you can put some information in there, maybe a question, a concern. Marc reaches out to you and gets the conversation started. Or You can skip all that. Just go to 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984. Now, really what this is all about is I save this money for retirement. Now, where am I going to put that money in retirement? Where should I put my money? Well, the people at J.P. Morgan did a pretty interesting study, and they found that if you're in retirement and 60 to 80% of your money is in guaranteed sources, those people spend more, 44% more. It also reduces their anxiety. It also supports a higher standard of living. They're basically saying that if you have a lot of guaranteed income, you're going to enjoy your retirement more, is basically what they're saying here. So, Mark, when you talk about these sources, first of all, can you define what is guaranteed income? What are those sources? And how much guaranteed income do your clients feel comfortable having?
Well, this is just kind of caddies off of what we just talked about, right? So we're talking about preservation tactics. We're talking about income. So let me just kind of describe to you my viewpoint on this. I have people that'll come to me and say, I don't believe in annuities. Well, whether you believe in them or not, they exist, okay? But let me just ask you a question. Do you happen to have a pension? Well, because if you have a pension, that's an annuity, right? Folks will come with a military pension. Or let's just think about Social Security for a second here. Isn't that built off of a trust fund? Isn't that pretty similar to like what an annuity would be, except it's ran by the government?
Right.
So these are conversations we like to have. And so we have these conversations to start with because we want to get some ideas of, do you have this income built into your portfolio? Because if you don't have this income built in, this is something that's very essential for retirement.
So the sources of guaranteed income, you just gave me an example. A pension is a guaranteed income source. Social Security is a guaranteed income source. So for those people who never had a pension at their job, they come in with a 401k. Can we build our own pension-like income source as we go into retirement?
Yes, and that's the thing. If you only have Social Security as your underlying, this is going to be my income in retirement, we've already talked about this. That trust fund, if they don't fix it, will be exhausted somewhere between 2032, 2033. You could bet that everybody's Social Security would be reduced in some fashion, 20, 30%, right? Well, let's just take that off the list right now. Let's just cut it when we're doing this planning, and let's talk about some other resources of where you can get some of this income. Lifetime income riders with annuities provide that type of income. And if you need that built into your portfolio because it gives you that sense of security in retirement, right, in terms of preservation tactics, maybe that's what you might need in those particular situations. We build these in for our clients when it's necessary. Now, if you have a lot of income sources and you're already built up, maybe we'll look at some other areas. But if you do have some concerns about the market, preservation tactics, things like that, but let me just kind of clarify for you lifetime income riders, because they're a little bit different than pensions in the sense that pensions are immediate annuities. An immediate annuity is a source of income right away. It's no longer an asset, so it counts as income. A lifetime income rider is a little different. You turn on this rider that could be for you or you and a spouse, depending on if you have that built in, and it could be built in for the rest of your lives as a lifetime income rider, right? You turn on the income, and they'll provide this income. What it does is eventually over time it'll start breaking into the principal, right? And let's just say you keep taking the income to the point where you're not making as much as what you're pulling out. What if it exhausts all the money? Well, if it exhausts all the money and you've set it up for you and your wife's lifetime, it'll continue to pay you for you or your wife's lifetime, both, just depending on who's living last, at the end. But the bottom line is, if you happen to pass away and there's a balance, then you pass that balance on to your beneficiaries. And so that's the difference between that and an immediate annuity, because immediate annuity is only income.
So there is a difference between getting income from something and having a guaranteed income product. For instance, you talk about dividend-paying stocks. So that's an income source, but it's not a guaranteed income source because that can go away. Same thing with structured notes. It's an income source, but that can go away. That can go to zero. But when we're talking about guaranteed income sources, that doesn't go down to zero, correct? Am I getting that right?
That's exactly right. And I'm glad you brought that up, because you combine that with, let's just say, a structured note. Structured note is a way where we could either have growth or income, and it might have what we call a buffer or a barrier. A barrier is where, let's just say, for example, there's a 20% barrier. It just means that you won't lose that first 20%. But if it goes down more than 20%, you'll feel the entire loss. So if it went down 25%, you'd get a 25% loss. If it was a buffer, it's different in the sense that the bank absorbs the first 20% loss. So if you lost 25, you lose 5%. But again, in both instances, as long as you don't lose more than 20%, you don't lose anything. But a structured note, no, of course it's not guaranteed. It's a derivative. It's built by a bank, and you're basically letting a very large bank borrow your money and certain parameters based on whether it's growth or income. When we're talking about annuities, there are those preservation tactics, and they call them guaranteed lifetime income riders. That's the title of them. So you can take that to the bank and understand that, it says it in the title, and that's how it actually works. It's a set up income source that you can rely on in retirement. And you know what? It'll make your life a little bit easier knowing that source is coming in.
Yeah, I think that when we really look at it, you really look at where money can come from in retirement, there's only a couple of places, really. There's the bank, there's the stock market, there's the insurance companies, there's real estate. Okay? Are you going to play in all of those places? Are you going to play in some of those places? How much are you going to play in those places? And that comes down to that risk conversation. I think it's also interesting that if you took a husband and a wife, let's just give them each $2,000 a month for retirement, that's $4,000. Then if you had $2,000 that you pulled from investments and $2,000 from a guaranteed income source, then you'd have $8,000 a month, which is about average for a retiree. But there you have $6,000 right there. That's a guaranteed income source, which goes right along with what this article says. 60 to 80% of your money coming from guaranteed income sources. This is really an important part of the conversation. Where is your paycheck coming from in retirement? Let's get that nailed down. Give Mark and the team a call. You can use the website, you can use the phone number. Here it is, moretoretire.com. Where is your paycheck coming from in retirement? How are you going to structure it? Find out. moretoretire.com. There's a place on the website there for you to put a little information in there. Mark and the team reaches out to you, or you can reach out to the team right now. It's 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984. Okay, so if you have a financial advisor in your life, you probably had a conversation at the end of the year about taxes. And one of the things that we talk about here on the show is something called tax loss harvesting. That means that if the market were to lose some money during the year, or you had a stock that lost money, you might be able to offset that in the new year when you file your taxes. It can help. But last year was a pretty good year again in the market, and everything pretty much went up. So that might not have been a big part of the conversation. So, Mark, tell me a little bit about what you're talking to people about now. We're thinking about taxes. I got to file on April the 15th. There's that. But then there's also, let's not just think about April 15th this year. Let's think about April 15th for the next 20 years. So what are we talking about now as far as taxes are concerned?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, I like to bring this up as a way that we can kind of look at, some different ideas and thought processes. I have clients coming to me about Roth conversions. We discussed that quite a bit. A lot of times if we open up an IRA account, we use Fidelity as our custodian. So say, for example, they have an IRA and, we have a Fidelity account set up and all that. Sometimes I'll just set up a Roth IRA account for them ahead of time because this way it's already set up, it's unfunded, and then we could just fund it at any point. Obviously, just the idea of doing some Roth conversions can get us set up for a future where we might have less of a taxable event later down the line. And what I mean by that? Well, if you were born before 1960, that means you're going to have to take requirement distributions at age 73. It's the required amount that the IRS makes you take out of qualified accounts like traditional IRAs or 401ks, 403bs, things like that, right? But not out of the Roth positions. So if you are born 1960 or after, it's age 75. So these are real conversations we like to have. Another conversation we like to have is, are you going to be working for another 10 years? if you're going to be working for another 10 years, then why don't we look at what I like to call a Roth IRA on steroids? What the heck is that, Randy? Well, it's life insurance. What do we do about that? Well, there's something called a modified endowment contract limit in a life insurance policy. Let's say we buy an index universal life policy and we make deposits into it. What you do is you lower the life insurance amount and you make sure you overfund the policy, but you stay underneath the modified endowment contract limit. And in the Internal Revenue Code, they say that in the future, that based on that and how that works, that basically you could take withdrawals from that money and then you can eventually take tax-free loans. So when you're doing those types of things and you're setting that up, basically that's another way where you can have income tax-free money. So if you're going to have income tax-free money in retirement, that's another example, just like a Roth IRA. So when we take those as examples, we also might look at something else. Well, my clients are way up on their accounts. I have clients that are so far up on their IRAs or non-qualified accounts, and you think, okay, well, what can we do differently? I mean, I have a client well over 20% over the last 10, 11 months, right? That can happen, but what we can do is we can look at maybe some dollar cost averaging. And when you look at that, how do you do that? Well, you can evolve an annuity for some of that. You can look at, hey, do I want to take some money over here that has risk and then move it into a pot that doesn't have risk? And maybe that annuity could provide a bonus. You could turn around and just take that bonus right back and put it back into the market. And it's almost like you moved over some money, got a little more safety, but you put some back over here and you did a little dollar cost averaging. It's another way where you can look at things a little differently too. So there's so many different ways and angles we can do things in retirement. And I love the fact that I work on both sides of the spectrum. I've got the insurance licenses where I can do annuities, life insurance, long-term care. But then over here, we got the brokerage, and that's the fiduciary standard of care of the business. So understanding these things, it's really important to know, what can your advisor do for you? And I have a real issue when I watch a commercial, for example, like Fisher Investments, where they say they think it's a conflict of interest for someone to have both. I'm thinking, are you crazy? How's that a conflict of interest? Yeah. You're offering your client as much as possible.
Yeah, it's so true. So very, very true. This whole thing about doing a conversion, moving money from a 401k over to a Roth, and then paying the taxes a little bit at a time until you get everything out of the tax wash. And you think, well, that'll help my kids. When they inherit my money, they're going to inherit it tax-free. That's true. But think about this. It not only can it help them, but it can also help you. When you get into your 70s and you're starting to take those RMDs, and, you've got to buy a car. Okay, so you need to buy a $35,000 car. Well, you got to take $45,000 out of your IRA in order to get it. Well, if you've done your Roth conversions, now maybe you can only take $35,000 out, exactly what you need. So from a tax perspective, this is certainly a conversation that you should probably have, at least look at those options there, because we've been forced to go into this area of 401ks and IRAs. That's where we're sending our money, and that is coming with a big tax bill. So let's talk about that and have that conversation as well. Give Mark a call. If most of your money's in a 401k, and that describes so many of us, this is where you need to have that conversation. 984-300-1984, 984-300-1984, or use the website, which is more2retire.com. All right, here's another story that you'll see regularly is how much money is going to be coming down in the great wealth transfer. All these baby boomers with all their money, and they're going to bring it down to their kids and all this kind of thing. And I get it. But you know what? Along with that article, many times it'll say, are you ready? And, you may be ready to get some money, sure, but are you ready to what you're going to be dealing with when that money comes down? Inheritance comes with some complexities. And the first one that I think of, Mark, is your parents may have had a financial advisor. And now all of a sudden you are sitting in front of that financial advisor, maybe for the very first time. And now you have to make a decision here to move the money over to your own care or your financial advisor's care, or do you leave it with that particular financial advisor that you maybe don't have any chemistry with at all? You don't even know this person. So how do you deal with that, Mark? I'm sure you've been on both sides of that one.
I've been on both sides. I've distributed money to beneficiaries, and they just didn't want to work with me. They wanted to work with someone else. And I've had it where they wanted to work with me, or I already had a relationship with them when they received money from parents, and then they came to me. I'm open to all sides of the spectrum. The thing is this: when I work with a client, my promise to them is that I'm going to help distribute to the next generation as long as I'm here, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my objective. In terms of fishing out for more business, I'm not going to do that. I'll say, look, if you would like to talk to me, I'm here to talk to you about it and share with you what we have, what we do, and how we go about things. But that's up to you. If you don't want to have that conversation, perfectly fine. What I will say is that we're able to offer a lot of different things. So our registered investment advisor firm is Impact Partnership Wealth, and Impact Partnership Wealth is a boutique advisory that has no more than 300 financial advisors. And of those 300 financial advisors, I am one of them, and we happen to have a proprietary platform called Market Guard. Market Guard's been around for a number of years, but Impact Partnership Wealth has nabbed them up and taken them in 4 years ago, and it's only to us. And so Market Guard has a bunch of charter financial analysts that have some incredible programs for folks that folks won't have access to outside of what we do. And that's another conversation we'd like to have and share. And yes, we use alternative investments like structured notes for growth and income as well, because also it could break up correlation. But if you really want to have a conversation about what we can do for your portfolio, well, what we'd like to do is ask you just to send a statement to my website. My website is More to Retire. It's not the number 2, it's TO. We are actually spelling it out like I need more to retire. It's moretoretire.com. If you go to moretoretire.com, there's a secure upload button in the top right-hand corner. If you want to submit something to me, it comes over securely to me. I can run a financial report. We'll bring you in. We'll go over that data, all the different bullet points of are you living up to what you want to live up to right now, and are you prepared for retirement? And these are the conversations we like to have, and I like to start there. It's a great place to start.
One of the things I think is we talk about when you choose a financial advisor, what are their qualities? What are their specialties? Where do they live? Who do they serve? And I think that you've got to kind of go through that same kind of a checklist. If your parents had a financial advisor and you wonder if you should keep an IRA there or you should keep some of the investments there, does this person spend most of their time helping retirees? Or is this person more of a stockbroker that is helping people grow their money? Nothing wrong with either area, but you got to kind of tailor it to the person that you are and the needs that you have. So if you want to develop income, if you want to deal with Social Security, you want to deal with Medicare, you want to deal with somebody who deals with that stuff on a regular basis. Give Mark a call. It's 984-300-1984, 984-300-1984, or online, it's moretoretire.com. I'm going to just follow this up a little bit because I've been going through this with my mom who passed away not that long ago. There's life insurance that's going to come to you without taxes. There's an IRA that may come to you with taxes. There are 401ks that may come to you and you may have to take an RMD for your parent. I mean, Mark, there's a lot to consider here that I'm finding out about that, do I take it before the end of the year? Do I go into the new year? How do I spread these taxes out somehow? There's a lot to discuss here when it comes to getting an inheritance, isn't there?
Absolutely. And this is important, a really important conversation to have as you're receiving this inheritance. If you want to talk to me about all these different facets, where the money's coming from, what do you have to do with the money? Well, if that money's been with your parents and I was managing it, obviously I can help you navigate all of those different areas, right? You might say to me, well, Mark, this IRA was only $30,000, so I don't feel like I have to do an inherited IRA. Okay, I understand that. Let's have a conversation about it, though. Let's actually look at your tax bracket, discuss, what you might be facing in that area. Am I a tax professional? No, if we have to add one in or bring one in, of course we'll do it. But can we roughly look at different things and numbers? Of course, everybody can. So these are the types of conversations we have. Life insurance, yeah, it's income tax free. So that's a nice little feather in your cap when you're receiving that money. Do you want to just take IRA money and convert it to Roth at some point? These are all the types of conversations we like to have. Can you dump money in a different way? Yes. How is this money? Is it diversified? Do I want to keep it in the same type of portfolio that I currently have? Oh, can I inherit this annuity? Is there something called a non-qualified stretch for an annuity? Is that possible? Well, let's take a look. Let's see if that's a possibility. There's so many different ways and angles that we can look at. What can we do for you and what can we do for you differently? What I can tell you is we've been around a long time and we want to help our clients as much as possible.
Give Marc a call. Let's talk through it, whether you're in that situation where you're getting things set up for your children or you're wondering about what your parents might do or what is going on there and you need some financial guidance there as well. Here's the number. Here's the website. More2retire.com. More2retire.com. Just spell it all out. More2retire.com. There's a place at the bottom of the page there for you to put some information in there. Then Marc reaches out to you, or you can skip all that. Just call. It's 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984. In many households, in my household, maybe yours too, there's somebody who deals with the day-to-day bills, and then there's somebody who deals with the retirement accounts. Okay, so when you get to retirement accounts, how do these two worlds come together? We'll talk about it. Coming up next on the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience.
A simple piece of paper. It's something we use every day. For the most part, it does what it's designed to do. It sits there flat on your desk as a placeholder for information. But with a couple strategic folds, suddenly your flat piece of paper becomes an airplane and flies across the room. Your 401k is kind of like that flat piece of paper. It just sits there as a placeholder for your money. Marc Oslar can show you those strategic moves to take your 401k from just sitting there to creating the income you need for retirement. Call today for a free no-obligation meeting. 984-300-1984. That's 984-300-1984. Or online at more2retire.com.
Welcome back to the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Online, you can find Marc at more2retire.com. Check out the 5 steps to more that we talk about. If it's time to talk about your retirement, what are you going to talk about? What does that meeting look like? That'll give you a real good idea there on the website, more2retire.com. Okay, so I mentioned it before the break there. Many times, somebody in the house does the day-to-day bills. Somebody else does all the retirement accounts. That's the way it is in our house. So now we're getting to the time when we're getting toward retirement, and how is that all going to work? Well, this is Ramit Sethi, and he tells the people at Morningstar, a lot of times you've got one person that's really engaged and another person who is not.
Here's the dynamic. We intuitively divide up responsibilities in a relationship. One person empties the dishwasher, the other mows the lawn. I get that. But money is unlike any of those things. Money is much more similar to parenting. It encompasses every part of life. And you would rarely see a couple, especially these days, who says like, oh, he does the parenting or she does the parenting. No, it's like, right, we both do it. We talk about it every day. And that is the same with money.
Okay, so if you're going to sit down with Marc, it probably makes sense for both of you to come to that meeting because, Marc, if one person's there and then that person says, well, I got to check with my wife, and then you bring the wife in, now we got to go through the whole thing again. So you might as well both be there. Do you find many times that there is one person engaged and one person not? And how do you deal with that? Or are they both engaged? Or do you have to tell them, hey, this is not only for you, it's for the both of you, because there might be a day where I'm just talking to one of you. Tell me about that.
Oh yeah, this happens. I mean, I've got people that'll come in, and let's say a gentleman comes in without his wife, and I'm thinking, oh geez, I had you come in before, and your wife was in here when we transacted business. It's a lot easier when you have both spouses here because they're on the same page.
Right.
Even if they don't really get fully involved in all that stuff, it's important to be on the same page. So sometimes I'll have some clients tell me, oh, my husband or oh, my wife, they don't need to be here until we get to that point. Okay, well, what point is that? And are you in agreement? Because sometimes there can be conversations that happen at home, not in front of me. And when they happen at home, not in front of me, I'm not there to answer certain questions that might linger. Because a lot of times when folks make a financial decision or they're thinking about making a financial decision, they don't want to have regrets. Right. And a lot of times when this comes up, they might be thinking about regrets before they do business. And then they certainly think about some regrets after they do business. It's like the buyer's remorse thing. They get nervous. And so for me, my objective is to answer all of these questions and constantly do it so people understand that over a course of a few years, we'll build a wonderful relationship together. But you're going to only get the information that you're asking for from me. So if it's needs and wants based on your retirement planning, that's what we're going to work on together. But it's essential for you guys to be in unity, even if one person does it a whole heck of a lot more than the other. That's why it's great when we have both spouses here, because we could be transparent.
This reminds me of when I go to the doctor. I'm not feeling well or something's wrong. Julie says, go to the doctor. I go to the doctor. I come back. She says, what did the doctor say? I said, he said, take these pills. She said, that's it? That's all the doctor said? You could go to your financial advisor and say, well, what did he say? He said, we should do this with our 401k. Is that it? Yeah, see, to both be in the room at the time when the questions come up, to ask the questions is so very, very important. I think, Mark, do you think sometimes people get a little paralyzed by all the details of it all? Because there's so much to go through. I mean, there's Social Security, and there's Medicare, and there's taxes, and there's 401ks, and there's all this stuff. And then sometimes you take all that in and you go, I got to think about this for a little bit, because it does get overwhelming, doesn't it?
They call that paralysis by analysis.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing. When we start, figuring out what's good for a person in terms of what we see, there's a lot of different ways to do it, right? But we have our ideas, and we share our ideas. But we try not to do too many ideas all at once, because it can be very difficult. But yes, I mean, it's also a big decision to do certain things. What I always tell people is, look, if you're going to invest with me in the market and do things there, and we open up a Fidelity account, IRA, individual account, Roth IRA, whatever it might be, that money right there, you're just signing a client agreement, agreeing to pay a percentage fee for us to manage the money. Okay, you can leave anytime you want. You're not stuck, and that's what I want people to know. That's a little different than when you invest into an annuity or a life insurance policy. It's a little different, right? Because those might have surrender charges attached to them. That's why especially when you're doing annuities and life insurance and those types of things, you want to do those strategically. It's for a specific purpose, and it's money that you don't want fully liquid at that time. So these are the types of conversations we have. It can be very, very difficult. And Randy, one of my things that I'm guilty of is sometimes I get down to it and I start talking about standard deviation and beta and correlation. Then I start talking about insurance products. Then I'm talking about how structured notes work and buffer and barrier. And then people are like, my gosh, I feel like a ping pong ball.
Yeah.
And I think, what am I doing here? I need to slow up, Mark, put it in layman's terms, have a real conversation, and try and simplify it. But I like to describe as much as possible to people, because sometimes folks will come back and say, well, you didn't tell me this or that or the other, and I don't want that to happen.
Well, that's one thing you're going to find when you get in the conference room with Mark. He's pretty passionate about what he does. He really loves it. So to have that kind of a person on the other side of the table who really wants to make it happen for you, I think that's what you want. Give Mark a call and kick the tires here and see if you're a good fit. MoreToRetire.com is the website. Learn more about Mark and the team. Learn the 5 steps to more. Learn all that's going on there on the website, and give him a call, or there's a place on the website actually where you can put a little information in there, and Mark Mark will reach out to you. Or here's the number. It's 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984 for a no-cost, no-obligation look at your retirement. There's some things going on right now out there that I think are changing the world of retirement planning, and not necessarily for the better. And what I mean is this. If you're in a home right now and it's got 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and a basement, and you raise your family, and most of the time when people get into their late 60s or 70s, they downsize. They go to a smaller home. It only makes sense. But in the environment that we live in right now, that house that you sell and that house that you buy, you may downsize your room, but you may upsize your mortgage. It's expensive to move. So that means a lot of people are just staying in place. They're going to stay in that home that they've been for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Well, that also says, well, hey, I'm here. Everything's going fine. I'll just keep going on like I am. And then they don't do the planning that they probably should when it comes to legacy planning, wills, trusts, who's going to get the house, what's going to happen to me if I can't handle this house anymore. Mark, I think that some of these things might keep people from doing the planning that they probably should be doing. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, and again, we were just talking about paralysis by analysis. You know, when people start thinking about all the different things that need to be done, well, just take one step at a time. You know, just listening to different speakers over time, you know, taking that first step, it's really helpful. You know, just like, you know, my wife and I, we were just taking steps to get rid of 20 years worth of stuff that we've collected over the years. Well, we had to take a step, right? Yeah. At least we got started. And that's the key. So you want to get started and step in the right direction. Don't feel discouraged if you haven't done this, that, or the other. And that includes, you know, financial planning, estate planning. When you come into my office, believe me, it's the no judgment zone, because you know what? You know, I work hard and I work smart as well. But again, I probably do more planning for my clients than I do for myself. Yeah. And truthfully, that's what I'm working on right now is planning for my family too. And I'll tell you, if I share something with you, it's because I would do it. You know, if I was in your shoes, this is what I would do. And that's a real conversation we like to have. But taking a step and then taking another step. And estate planning is a very important thing, involving the attorneys to do the paperwork. You know, if you're worth a certain amount of money and you have money spread out in different real estate and stuff like that, you might be thinking about a living trust at that point. You know, these types of conversations, they all come up, and we want to talk about every one of these subjects.
The other part of what's going on right now that I think also affects people when it comes to this area is this. There's so much fear out there. You hear it all the time. Number one fear, running out of money. I'm going to run out of money. Everybody's afraid of running out of money. And so there's a tendency now. I mean, boomers have done a really good job of saving money, and they overall, for the most part, want to send that money down to their kids. That's a very common thing. But with everybody scared of running out of money, now people are saying, okay, I'm going to spend everything I have, and if there's anything left over, you can have it. And that's their legacy plan, okay? So by being afraid of running out of money doesn't mean that you should neglect these vital legal documents that you probably should have. And I think some of the stuff that's going on right now is not working for us in a positive way when it comes to planning.
Right. And that's the thing. You know, let's just say you haven't set up your plan. Well, there's always time, okay? Now, you might feel like time has run out, but it hasn't. You know, if you wake up with the breath of life that in that morning, then that means there's a purpose there for you, a God-driven purpose, all right? So let's have that conversation and see where you might need to take that step. Don't let fear paralyze you from taking a step forward, because that's what fear does. You know, fear, the intention, when you feel fear, it does so many different things to you between blood pressure and anxiety. And the first thing that happens out of a person is that almost paralysis feeling, and they don't want to do anything. And you know what? You come to my office, if you base your decisions on fear or concern or emotion, we're not going to get anywhere. And that's why I like to have these conversations, because if you do something, it's better than nothing.
Yep. Taking that step forward and really just starting to get going. You say to yourself, well, I don't have a will. I don't even know if I need a trust. Well, why don't you sit down and ask some of those questions and see if those documents are even needed? If they are, let's get started on them. I mean, we're talking investments, and income, and taxes, and legacy. There's a lot of boxes to check off when it comes to retirement planning. Let's get going on it. We've just flipped the page on a brand new calendar. We are that much closer to your retirement. Let's have the conversation. MoreToRetire.com is the website. MoreToRetire.com or 984-300-1984 for a no-cost, no-obligation look at your retirement. 984-300-1984. All right, so guy writes in and says, here's what I was surprised about. I should have prepared better when I went into my early retirement. So the first thing he said he had to self-fund health care for a couple of years, and that was way more expensive than I thought. And that's the biggest component here, Mark. If you decide you're going to retire early, congratulations, way to go. But if you do it before 65, you're going to have to come up with something, some sort of a bridge to get you to Medicare. And people are finding that's pretty expensive, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's the thing. Let's have this conversation as well. When do you want to retire? Folks are saying, I'm going to turn on Social Security at 62, but then I got to bridge the gap to 65 before I get on Medicare, right? And this is a real conversation because things are kind of expensive. I'll be honest with you, Randy. My wife and I were looking at changing our health plan and everything because truthfully, it just shot way up, right? I mean, I'll be honest, our health plan went up 25% this year.
Yep.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yep.
That's a hard thing to deal with. So when you're preparing for this retirement thing, you want to retire at 60 or 62, and you're trying to figure out how to bridge the gap before Medicare. If you're not on TRICARE, you're not a retired government employee, or you don't have a plan in place where you have these extra benefits, we need to actually gauge this. This is important. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but it's important to plan for it, because if you don't start planning for it, it's going to feel like a snake biting you, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, Randy. I mean, we have to be ready and prepared for the what ifs. And that's an income gap that if we can't make it up, we're going to look you in the eye and say, hey, you might want to wait to 65.
Yeah, you just said it's like a snake biting you. What is your option? Cobra, which is a snake, by the way. Yeah, Cobra, you can only do that for 18 months, and it's very expensive. It's going to be over $1,000 a month probably for you, so that's one option. Then you've got the marketplace, the Obamacare route. You can go that direction. And, there's a lot of different things to look at, but it does get very expensive. So that was the first thing that he said was a surprise to him. The next one was, he said, I thought that Social Security would be able to handle my monthly expenses. As it turned out, it was not enough. I got to believe the average Social Security check's about $1,600 a month. I hear people getting $3,000, $5,000, $6,000. I hear those stories, but mostly the average is much less, isn't it?
It is. I mean, that's the thing. Is Social Security going to cover your monthly expenses most of the time? No. And that's, most folks think that it's going to do that, but for the majority of folks, it's not. So how do we make up that income gap? Well, we talk about those 3 bullet points: preservation, income, and growth. Look, we're going to look for sensible growth in retirement, but if you ask me the 2 most important things, it's preservation and income. Look, you worked your whole life, which means you are accumulating, and accumulating. So that's a place where you're trying to make as much money as possible, right? And pile it all up. But when you come into retirement, then you have to look at preservation tactics if you're thinking about income, because you want that income to be reliable in retirement. And if that's the case, then you get into the little bit of preservation / distribution stage of life. And the distribution could be for you and could be for future generations, depending on how we build the plan. Just like you mentioned with bridging the gap for Medicare, that's the part that we're talking about here, is maybe we can bridge the gap. If you have the assets to do that, we can build a plan around that to bridge the gap. But these are the types of conversations that have to happen ahead of time. If you give me 5 or even 10 years, and we can say without a shadow of a doubt, hey, here's your wink. You're looking at retirement now, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Can we get that income, and can we get those sources? So when we talked about fixed index annuities or any other type of annuity that has an income rider, it's called a guaranteed lifetime income rider. It can give you that security in retirement. So preservation and income tactics together, they work together hand in hand, because the 2 things we have to think about are inflation and taxes, and those are really important. We'll get the growth you're looking for, but we got to do it sensibly when we're preparing for retirement.
We're looking at this article of a person who retired early, and he said, these are the things I kind of missed. First one was he retired before Medicare, and it was very expensive to do health care before Medicare. The next one was he thought Social Security would be enough. As it turns out, it wasn't. And the last one says, this was my biggest miss, unexpected expenses. A house repair, a car repair, a trip. These things turned out to be budget busters, and he said he had to cut his lifestyle in order to afford some of those things. So I get that. I talked to somebody one time, says everybody in retirement has a $10,000 event every year, be it positive or negative. Roof goes out, car goes out, something happens along the way. There's going to be one of those events, or it could be a positive event. Nothing's happened this year. We can take that money and go on that Italy cruise or whatever we wanted to go on. But the idea of planning in a slush fund, I don't know what we call it, Mark, just in case something happens, that's got to be a part of the retirement planning on the line item, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Do you own a property? Do you own a house? I mean, if you own a house, you know there's going to be expenses that come up. Do you own cars? Do you drive them enough to know that there are things that come up with cars too? Well, that's why people have this conversation with me of, well, Mark, I always thought renting was throwing money away. Well, renting can be a real option in retirement. Mm-hmm. You might get displaced, one or two times. That's always a possibility, but it just depends on contract and the things that you sign up for. But what I can tell you is that renting in retirement is a real distinct possibility, because then you don't have those expenses of when the house gets messed up, the toilet gets messed up. You don't have to fix the porch railings and those types of things. The garage door goes out. Hey, my garage door just recently went out. Okay. So these are real conversations, and yeah, you want to be prepared for that. So liquidity, the L word, having enough liquidity. Well, if you invest with me in the market, that's also liquid too. So just understanding that. And a lot of the annuities too, they allow up to a certain percentage of money to be withdrawn, whether it be 5 or 10% a year, sometimes a little more depending on the types of riders that are added to those policies. But again, like I said, having enough liquidity in retirement is extremely important, building it into your plan. So do we have preservation? Do we have income? Are we prepared for inflation and taxes? Do we have liquidity? And can we grow our money and be prepared for all of this in retirement? Well, these are the conversations we're going to have.
So this article, this person who retired early, which we love for him and we would love for you too. It's a great meeting when you sit down with Mark and say, can I retire? And he gives you the thumbs up, the green light. You thought it was going to be at 67, but now it's at 65. Fantastic. But if you try to retire before 65, know this, the health item is going to be something you're going to deal with, and that's going to take some conversation. Give Mark a call wherever you are on this retirement scale, whether it's 3 years from now, 1 year from now, you're right on the edge. 2026 is the year you're going to go, and you haven't sat down and talked about the math of it. Okay, let's get that conversation going. 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984, or use the website, which is more2retire.com. Spell it all out, more2retire.com. And Mark, we've got just a minute or so here. Let's talk a little bit. As people go through your website, they're going to see the 5 steps to more. So let's kind of go through that a little bit here so people know what they're in for as they give you a call.
Yeah, sure. So on the 5 steps to more, I want people to understand, just go to my website, more2retire.com. And you'll see it under our process. It's our process guide. Under those 5 steps, the most important thing to understand is going over the treetop view and discovering your retirement desires and those types of things. So if you understand where we go from that point, those 2 steps can be combined into 1 step. And how do we do that? Well, we get an idea. We look at your financial data. We run a report ahead of time. We bring you in. We have a conversation. We go over the report, the data analysis. We talk about your retirement desires and dreams. We put it all together in one. right? And then when you come back, we give you some ideas of what we can do. So obviously implementing those plans is part of step 3. And then when we implement those plans, you become a client. So obviously we're going to do steps 4 and step 5. Step 4 is ongoing support and, growth. And step 5 is what? Sometimes we're going to have to make some changes and that's going to come up too. And that's a part of life. And I brought that up with you, Randy, before, is Who Moved My Cheese? That's this little short story book, right? Read it. You know why? Because in life, you're going to have to make some switches, adjustments, and changes. And with us, we're always going to do that too. We're not just going to set it and forget it. It's not how we do it. So we're looking to work with you, talk to you, and we want to get to know you. It's very open. And no, we won't bite your finger. We want to sit you down at the office, provide you with a nice cookie, maybe a coffee or something nice to drink, and we'll have a great time.
Well, you are worried about your retirement. Let's get those worries off the table. Let's get it all in data and find out what you're in for. You've been saving all these years. What does that mean for you in a paycheck? You walk away from your employer paycheck. Now this is a paycheck you're going to deliver. And along with Social Security, is it going to be enough to support your retirement lifestyle? Let's find out. Are you headed for a tax problem? Let's find out. You have those important documents for later life. Let's find out. Give Mark a call. 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984 for a no-cost, no-obligation look and meeting about your retirement. Also, use the website, more2retire.com. Check out those 5 steps to more and more about Mark and how he helps people in retirement. more2retire.com. That is all the time that we have for today. We hope you have a great weekend. We'll be here next week. We hope you will be too on the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience.
Insurance products are offered through the insurance business Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Marc Oslar Retirement Experience is also an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through Impact Partnership Wealth LLC, a registered investment advisor. IPW does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by Marc Oslar Retirement Experience are not subject to investment advisor requirements. Investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing carrier. This radio podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be considered as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. Marc Oslar Retirement Experience is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute legal or tax advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein are provided by third parties that have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Market Guard is a firm that provides investment signals as well as portfolio allocation recommendations for a wide variety of model portfolios. Market Guard does not offer advice or enter into fiduciary relationships. Please remember that converting an employer plan account to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. Increased taxable income from the Roth IRA conversion may have several consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.